I always tell people this. If you've never worked on a cruise ship, you don't actually understand what fear feels like. Not the regular kind, no. I'm talking about the kind that crawls under your skin when you're miles from land with nothing but dark water beneath you, and you hear footsteps on a part of the ship no one should be walking on. My name is Marcus Hale, and I spent 7 years working as a junior safety officer on the Mariner of the Tides. I loved that job. Good pay, endless ocean views, and every day felt different. But there's one night, one encounter that made me quit the industry forever. I've tried telling people about it. Some believe me, most don't. But every word I'm about to say is exactly how it happened. And if you've ever taken a cruise, God, I hope you didn't hear the same thing I did. It started on our third night around 1:40 in the morning. The ship was quiet, passengers asleep, hallways dimmed to that soft yellow glow that always made me feel like I was walking inside a dream. I was doing my routine patrol when the radio on my shoulder crackled with static, sharp, sudden, like someone had pressed the button but said nothing. That wasn't normal. Radios don't open channels by themselves. I slowed down, listening. The hallway around me felt unusually cold, the kind of cold that didn't make sense indoors. I tried calling the bridge. Nothing. Just the same faint crackle like someone was breathing into the line. I kept walking, telling myself it was just interference, but something was wrong. You ever get that feeling that the air around you is holding its breath? That's what it felt like. And then I saw her. A woman stood at the far end of Deck 9, slender, about 50, wearing a loose cream sweater and navy pants. She looked lost, confused, turning her head slowly like she was listening for something. At first, I thought she was just a passenger who'd woken up disoriented. Happens all the time. I started toward her, raising a hand, but halfway down the hall, she stepped sideways into a service door that should have been locked. Worse, she didn't even open it. She just slipped inside like the door wasn't solid at all. I stopped cold. Doors don't behave like that. People don't behave like that. I reached the spot and tried the handle. It was locked, like always. I checked the security seal, untouched, but my skin prickled. I could feel it, the lingering sensation that someone had been standing right there only seconds before. My radio crackled again. This time a voice whispered through the static. One word, stretched thin like it traveled through 1,000 miles of interference. Marcus. No one on that ship should have known I was in this hallway. My patrol routes weren't public, and no one should have been calling me by name on an encrypted channel. I stepped back, scanning both ends of the corridor. Everything looked normal, too normal. But then, from behind the locked service door, I heard movement, slow, dragging footsteps, coming closer, closer, and then silence. I don't know why, but I leaned in, pressing my ear to the cold metal. The ship hummed softly, but beneath that, something else breathed. I swear to God it was breathing. I told myself to walk away, report it, let maintenance handle it in the morning. But a part of me, the part that still believed everything on the ship could be explained, forced me to stay. I knocked on the door. A soft knock answered back from the other side. 3 taps, slow, deliberate, mimicking mine exactly. Every part of my body screamed to run, but I couldn't move. I lifted my hand again, hesitated, then knocked once more. This time, the knock that answered wasn't calm. It slammed the metal so hard the frame vibrated against my skull. I jumped back, pulse hammering, eyes locked on the door. Something was definitely in there, something that wasn't a person. Or if it was a person, it wasn't acting like one. I reached for my radio again, and right then, from behind me, way down the hall, someone whispered, "Don't open it." I spun around. The hallway was empty, but not quiet, because faintly, from somewhere above me, like from the deck above or the deck below, I heard hurried footsteps running across metal flooring, not walking, running.
and then the sound just stopped all at once. That's when I thought of something I didn't want to think about, a rumor that older crew members used to whisper during night shifts, a passenger who vanished between decks decades ago, someone who took the wrong elevator, stepped out onto a level that didn't exist on the ship's blueprint, and was never seen again. They used to say she still wanders the ship at night, moving through places that shouldn't be connected, slipping through doors that no one can open. And suddenly, the lost woman I saw didn't seem like a passenger anymore. I took one shaky breath, stepped away from the door, and told myself to head back to the bridge. But I didn't make it even 5 steps before that soft, cold whisper came again from behind me. "Marcus, she's not the only one who walks between decks." I turned. The service door, the door that had been locked, was now hanging open, and a faint shadow moved inside. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen, staring at that service door hanging wide open. I knew that door. I'd passed it 1,000 times. It never opened without a key card, and even then it gave you trouble. But right now, it was open like someone had invited me inside. Every survival instinct in me said to turn around and leave, go back to the bridge, call someone, wake the entire security team if I had to. But the ship around me felt different, heavier, like the air itself was warning me not to look away. I stepped toward the doorway slowly, almost without realizing it. The darkness inside was absolute, thick like it had weight. There was no light source in there, yet I could still feel that something was shifting deeper inside, just out of view, something that knew I was standing there. I didn't cross the threshold. That was the rule we all quietly followed on board. Never enter a dark service space alone at night. But as I leaned closer, trying to make sense of the shapes inside, I noticed something on the floor, a single white card. I crouched, picked it up, and felt my stomach twist. It was a room key, cabin 6243, a passenger cabin. Except cabin 6243 had been empty since embarkation. No one had checked into it for the entire voyage. My fingers tightened around the card. I straightened up, heart beating fast, and that's when the low whisper drifted out of the darkness again. But this time, it wasn't saying my name. It was the sound of someone crying. Soft, shaky, broken, the kind of cry that carried real fear, not the theatrical kind, not the dramatic kind, but the kind that came from someone who truly believed they wouldn't be getting out. I stepped back, my breath catching in my throat. I wasn't alone in that hallway anymore. I could feel eyes on me, behind me, above me. I couldn't even tell. The ship was too quiet, too still. Even the engines sounded distant, like they were far below the ocean instead of right beneath us. I forced myself to turn and start walking, clutching the room key so tight the corners dug into my palm. I'd barely made it a few steps when the radio on my shoulder crackled again. But this time, it wasn't static. It was a voice, a man's voice, cold.
Flat, completely emotionless. Cabin 6243. Now. I stopped where I stood. No one, absolutely no one, on the ship would have issued an order like that at 2 a.m. without protocol. And the voice, it didn't sound like anyone I worked with. It didn't even sound human in the way people normally sound. It was like someone trying to mimic the tone of a crew member, but missing the natural rhythm of a real voice. I swallowed hard and lifted the radio. "Who is this?" I whispered. No answer. Just a long, slow inhale that hissed through the speaker like it came from inches away. Then he said, "She opened the wrong door." I felt something cold ripple down my spine. Before I could respond, the radio beeped. The signal cut entirely. I looked down at the room key again and noticed something I hadn't seen before. There was writing on the back. Small. Scratched in. Like someone carved the letters with something sharp. "Please don't let him in." My pulse spiked. My throat tightened. I looked around the hallway again, expecting to see someone standing there, waiting for my reaction. But the corridor was empty. Still. Too still. The ship groaned softly as it cut through the ocean, a normal sound. But right now it felt like the metal around me was tensing, bracing for something. I should have gone to the bridge. I should have reported everything, handed over the key card, and washed my hands of the whole thing. But instead, I found my feet taking me toward Deck 6. The elevator ride down was agonizing. Every floor we passed felt like the ship was sinking deeper into silence. When the doors slid open, Deck 6 was pitch black, except for the emergency lights glowing faintly along the carpet edges. It felt like I'd stepped into a different world, one where sound didn't behave the same way, where shadows lingered longer than they should. I walked slowly, the empty rooms around me seeming to inhale as I passed. Cabin 6243 was at the far end, near the corner where the hallway turned sharply. When I reached the door, I stopped and listened. Nothing. No crying, no whispering, just the soft hum of the ship and my own heartbeat pounding against my ribs. I swiped the keycard. The light flashed green. The lock clicked open. I pushed the door slowly and immediately smelled salt water, not the clean, fresh scent from the deck. No, this was stale, heavy, like something soaked in seawater had been sitting inside that room for days. I stepped in, barely crossing the threshold, and noticed the room wasn't completely dark. The bathroom light was on. A pale, sickly glow spilled across the floor, just enough to see that the bed was untouched, but the carpet near the foot of it was wet. Freshly wet. My mouth went dry. I took one step farther inside, only one, and then froze. Someone was standing in the bathroom doorway, a woman, hair dripping, clothes clinging to her like she'd just crawled out of the ocean, her head tilted, her eyes, dark, wide, hollow, locked onto mine. And in a voice barely above a breath, she whispered, "You shouldn't be here. He follows anyone who hears her cry." Before I could move, before I could even react, the light behind her flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. And then, everything went black. For a few seconds, I didn't breathe. I don't think I even could. When that bathroom light snapped off, the room dropped into a darkness so complete it felt physical, like something draped itself over my head and wrapped around my shoulders. I stumbled back instinctively, hands out, trying to feel for the door, but the moment I moved, the carpet beneath my shoes squelched. Not just damp, soaked. Ice-cold water seeped through the fabric, chilling my feet. I whispered into the dark, "Ma'am, are you all right?" My voice sounded small, too small. There was no answer, just that slow, subtle sound of water dripping. Steady, rhythmic, close. I pulled my phone out, shaking, thumb fumbling for the flashlight button. The second the screen lit up, I felt a presence shift, like someone moved just outside the cone of light. I swung the beam toward the bathroom doorway. No one there. The doorway was empty. The floor tiles glistened. Water pooled across them. But the woman, she was gone. I swallowed hard, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. I was about to turn and get out, just run, when something caught my eye on the bed. A folded towel, plain white. Nothing strange about that, except for the fact that it was dripping. Water slid off the edges steadily, like it had just been pulled from the ocean. I lifted the corner with 2 fingers. Underneath it was a small, wrinkled photograph. I froze. The woman in the picture, the woman I'd just seen, stood on the deck of an older version of this very ship, smiling with her arm around a man. The back had a date scrawled in faded ink, June 12, 1997. My throat tightened. That didn't make sense. She looked exactly the same. Same face. Same age. Same clothes, even. I stuffed the picture in my pocket without thinking. I had to leave. Now. But before I could reach the door, I heard something behind me. The faintest splash, like a foot hitting shallow water. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my hand. Nobody. Just the dark. Another splash. Closer. Then another, even closer, like wet footsteps approaching across the soaked carpet. I backed up so fast, I hit the dresser behind me. My phone shook in my grip as I angled the light lower, and that's when I saw them. Footprints. Fresh, wet footprints appearing one by one, heading straight toward me. But there was no body making them. No shape. Just footsteps materializing on the carpet, water splattering as whatever was walking dragged itself forward. I bolted. I almost ripped the door off its hinges as I scrambled into the hallway, slamming it shut behind me. My chest burned, my lungs screaming for air as I pushed myself back from the door. Then the hallway lights flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. And on the 3rd flicker, something shifted in the corner of my vision. A silhouette. Tall. Male. Standing perfectly still at the far end of the corridor. I raised my light slowly, the beam shaking as it traveled up the figure. Black shoes. Water dripping from the cuffs. A uniform. One of ours. But old, like something from the early days of the ship. Dusty gold trim. A name tag so tarnished the letters were barely visible. When the light hit his face, my breath snagged in my throat. He didn't have one. No eyes, no mouth. Just smooth, pale skin stretched over a skull-shaped outline as water dripped steadily from where his eyes should have been. I staggered backward, almost slipping. My voice cracked. "Hey, stop!" The faceless crew member didn't move at first. He just tilted his head slowly, like studying me. And then, he started walking. Not fast, not slow, just steady, measured. Each step leaving a wet print on the carpet. I turned and ran. The hallway was long, too long, like it wasn't the same hallway I came down minutes ago. I sprinted past cabin numbers that didn't match the ship's layout at all. 1244, 8101, 2719, numbers that didn't belong on Deck 6. My chest felt tight, my legs burned. But I didn't stop. As I rounded the corner near the stairwell, a voice hissed through the radio, sharp and close. "Don't look behind you." I didn't. I couldn't. I barreled into the crew staircase, slamming the door shut behind me, leaning my whole weight against it. My breath came in gasps, the thin metal vibrating against my back, as if someone was on the other side, listening. The air in the stairwell felt stale, heavy with moisture. Somewhere below me, deep down the stairwell shaft, something splashed, something big. I started climbing up, fast, taking the stairs 2 at a time. But halfway to Deck 8, a sound drifted up from below, a wet, dragging step, followed by another, and another. Slow, steady, climbing. I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to quiet my breathing. The metal banister vibrated under my palm as the footsteps echoed up the stairwell. They weren't human. They weren't trying to hide. They wanted me to hear. When I reached Deck 8, I burst through the door and slammed it shut, twisting the lock. The hallway here was brighter, warmer, filled with the soft hum of life. Passengers sleeping, televisions whispering faintly behind doors. Normal, comforting. I leaned against the wall, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor, trying to slow my breathing. Then I saw movement at the opposite end of the hallway. The woman from the service corridor, dripping, swaying slightly, watching me. And this time, she smiled. Not kindly, not sadly, but like she finally recognized me. She lifted her hand slowly, palm up, and made a motion, as if telling me to follow. I shook my head. No, I'm not going anywhere with you." Her expression shifted instantly. The smile faded. Her lips parted, and in that same fragile, trembling voice from before, she whispered, "You have to. He already marked you." My blood turned to ice. Before I could speak, before I could move, every light on the deck blinked out. The hallway plunged into darkness, and something wet touched my shoulder. The moment that wet hand touched my shoulder, every muscle in my body locked. I didn't scream. Couldn't. My throat tightened so violently I thought I'd choke on my own breath. I didn't turn around. I knew, on some instinctive animal level, that turning around would be a mistake I wouldn't walk away from. The hand tightened, fingers cold and heavy like they'd been soaking underwater for hours. I whispered, shaking, "Please, don't." But the touch disappeared as quickly as it came, leaving the air behind me unnaturally cold. I forced myself to move. Not run. I didn't dare run, but inch forward blindly in the darkness. My hands stretched out in front of me, sweeping through the air, trying to remember where the cabin doors were in relation to the nearest stairwell. Then, from behind me, close enough that I felt the breath on my neck, a whisper broke the silence. "Marcus, you saw her." I squeezed my eyes shut. The voice wasn't human, not in the way humans sound. It was flat, empty, too even, like it didn't come from lungs or vocal cords, but something mimicking speech, something that should never speak. I swallowed hard and whispered back, "What do you want from me?" The darkness answered with a long, rattling inhale. Then, softly, "Don't follow her." I turned. Couldn't help it. Even in the dark, I could see the faint silhouette of the woman further down the hall, the glow of emergency lights barely outlining her shape. She was staring at me, hair dripping, hands trembling, but the shape behind me, the voice, the wet breath against my ear, they weren't her. The lights flickered back on. When my eyes adjusted, the hallway looked different again. Wrong. Longer. The doors were spaced unevenly, numbers glowing in a dull yellow font I had never seen on any ship. And the woman had moved closer, far closer than she should have been able to in that brief flicker. Her skin was paler now, dripping more heavily. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle. And her eyes, God, her eyes were dark pits, not empty, but deep enough to swallow the light around them. She reached out, fingers shaking, water running down her arm. "You have to see," she whispered. "You have to know what he did." I backed away slowly, shaking my head. "No, I'm not going anywhere with you." "For 30 years, she choked out, voice cracking like ice splitting. "I have been trying to show someone." Her whisper trembled. "How he drowned us." The hallway temperature dropped instantly. My breath fogged, the carpet soaked beneath my shoes again. Somewhere far behind me, a heavy step echoed. Then another. Steady, wet, coming closer. The faceless crew member. I ran. I sprinted toward the nearest stairwell, heart pounding so hard it drowned out the sound of my own footsteps. The walls around me seemed to shift as I moved, muted colors blurring into each other, lights flickering unpredictably. Every few strides, I heard that wet step again behind me. Slow, deliberate, like whoever or whatever was following me didn't need to hurry. It already knew I had nowhere to go. I slammed into the stairwell door, flung it open, and rushed inside. The door didn't shut behind me. It didn't even move. It stayed wide open, as if something was holding it back from closing. I stared at it, terrified to see what might be blocking it, but the doorway was empty. Empty, and yet the door refused to budge. The air in the stairwell grew thick with moisture. Somewhere beneath me, far down the metal steps, I heard water rushing, like a flood pouring into the lower decks, but the ship wasn't sinking. I would have felt the tilt. I would have heard alarms. This wasn't real water. This was their water, the same water soaking the carpet, the same water dripping from the woman's hair, the same water that filled the lungs of passengers who vanished decades ago. A cold dread settled over me as I grabbed the railing and started climbing. Up, not down. Higher felt safer. Higher felt farther from whatever waited in those lower decks. But halfway up, I heard a second set of footsteps. Light. Bare. Quick. I looked up. At the landing above me stood the woman again, her soaked sweater clinging to her body, head tilted, eyes wide with a sadness that felt bottomless. "You're climbing the wrong way," she said softly. "You'll only make him angry." Her voice echoed unnaturally in the stairwell, overlapping itself like more than one version of her was speaking at once. I froze. She took one step down. Water dripped from her clothes onto the metal, each drop echoing far too loudly. Then, another step. And another. I backed up, gripping the railing so tightly my knuckles burned. "Why me?" I whispered. "Why are you following me?" Her expression shifted, anguish, fear, desperation, all tangled together. "Because you heard my cry," she said. "And once you hear it, you belong to the space between." The air rushed out of my lungs. The space between what? She lifted her hand and pointed downward, to the shadowy depths of the stairwell, where the steps disappeared into a black void. Between decks. A sound erupted from below. A massive splash. Then a wet scraping noise against metal, like something enormous was climbing up toward us. The woman's eyes widened in terror. "He's coming." She turned her head sharply toward me, face tightening with urgency. "You have to choose, Marcus. Now." Her voice trembled. "Come with me, or let him take you." My pulse hammered. "Take me where?" Her lips parted. "To where we drowned." Before I could react, before I could even breathe, the stairwell lights exploded in a shower of sparks. And in the sudden darkness, a hand, ice cold, powerful, and unmistakably not human, clamped around my ankle. I don't know how I was even standing at that point. My hands were shaking, my clothes were damp with sweat, and my breathing felt like it was dragging through broken glass. But I kept walking, slow, careful steps, because the one thing I'd learned during that entire nightmare was this: sudden movements made him appear faster. And as I moved down the hallway, the lights flickered again. I swear the corridor stretched an extra 10 feet each time the bulbs blinked out. The air grew tight, like it was pressing inward, and that low hum, the same one I'd heard in the first cabin, rose behind my ears. I tried not to turn around, but every instinct screamed that someone was standing right behind me. I didn't dare look. I don't think I could have handled seeing that man again, or whatever he truly was. I made it back to the main deck and pushed through the emergency door. The moment I stepped outside, the wind hit me so hard it nearly spun me around. Waves slammed against the side of the ship, and for a second I thought we were sinking. Crew members were running across the deck, shouting into radios, tying down equipment as the storm intensified out of nowhere. One of them grabbed my arm, yelling something I couldn't hear over the wind, but when he pulled me closer, I recognized him. It was the same security guard who'd first questioned me about the changing cabin numbers. The same guy who had told me none of this made sense. He looked at the state I was in and his expression dropped, like he already knew the answer to the question he hadn't asked yet. I tried explaining, but the storm swallowed my words. He pushed me toward the interior door, trying to get me to safety, but I yanked my arm free and pointed behind us toward the upper cabin floors. And it was insane, because even in that chaos, even in that storm, I could see movement through the windows, a shadow sliding across the glass, not running, not walking. Just drifting, and it was heading toward us. I backed up so fast I almost tripped. The guard followed my eyes, but before he could react, every single light across that side of the ship went dark in one synchronized blink. The storm didn't cut them. The rest of the ship stayed lit. Only the cabins the passenger had moved through were swallowed in black, and right where the hallway window should have been, a single white outline appeared, a silhouette, perfectly still, perfectly facing us. I told the guard we had to move. He didn't argue. We sprinted back inside and slammed the door behind us. The storm didn't feel like the biggest threat anymore. Not even close. We ran down toward the mid-level deck, where the crowds were gathering, confused and irritated but safe without knowing it. I could hear the ship's intercom crackle, the captain announcing that all passengers must stay in designated areas until further notice. The crew had no idea what was hunting me. Or maybe they did, and they simply couldn't admit it. The guard told me to wait by the staircase while he contacted someone higher up, maybe the same people he'd checked with before. I stood there, gripping the railing, trying to steady my breathing. But then the metal under my hand vibrated. Not from the storm, from something moving inside the structure. I pulled my hand away, staring as the vibration intensified, like the footsteps of something walking inside the walls. Closer, closer, closer. The guard came back running full speed, shouting my name, but before he reached me, the lights behind him flickered and he stopped mid-stride. I saw his face twist in confusion, his eyes widening as he looked past me. I didn't want to turn. I really didn't. But my body acted on instinct, slowly, carefully turning toward the doorway behind me. And there he was. Not running. Not floating. Just standing. Leaning slightly as if he'd been waiting for me to notice him. The same wrinkled shirt. The same expressionless face. But the eyes, they weren't hollow anymore. They were watching. Focused. Aware. He took one step forward. I stumbled back so fast I crashed into the guard. We both hit the ground as the man reached the bottom of the stairs without making a sound. Not one creak of metal. Not one footstep. Nothing. He lifted his arm. Not fast. Not slow. Just mechanical. And pointed directly at me. Not the guard. Not the room. Me. The lights exploded back on, and the ship lurched violently to the side. People screamed as tables slid, chairs toppled, and the ship tilted so far it felt like we'd roll. The guard grabbed me and hauled me toward the emergency exit, shouting for other passengers to move. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I did, I knew I'd see him right behind me. We made it to the crew's stairwell, sprinting down flight after flight until we reached a heavy security door. The guard pounded on it, yelling codes and names and clearance levels until someone opened it from the other side. The moment we stepped in, the door slammed shut, and multiple bolts locked automatically behind us. Alarms were blaring. Crew members were shouting into radios. The captain's voice was cracking over the intercom, and through it all, I heard something else. A faint dragging sound sliding across the other side of the metal door. Slow. Steady. Inhumanly patient. The guard told 2 crew techs to escort me to the lower-level medical room, somewhere deep inside the ship where the walls were reinforced. They didn't ask questions. They just moved. I kept looking back over my shoulder, expecting the man to appear in every reflective surface. Every corner. Every hallway. They left me inside a compact medical bay with bright white LED lights, and told me to stay put while they coordinated with the captain. I don't know how long I sat there, minutes, maybe hours, before the door opened again and a different officer stepped inside, calm but visibly disturbed. He carried a clipboard but didn't look at it. He just asked me one question. How many cabins did he move through while you were awake? I told him everything. Every number. Every shift. Every impossible relocation. He didn't write any of it down. He didn't even blink. When I finished, he let out a long breath and said, "Then the containment didn't hold this time." I asked what that meant, but he didn't answer. He simply stepped out and locked the door. I didn't hear anything after that except footsteps running down the main corridor and the sound of something heavy being dragged above me, like furniture or metal crates. Then, about 30 minutes later, the engines shifted gear and the storm outside calmed instantly, like someone turned it off instead of it passing naturally. The officer came back in and told me the ship would be docking early at a private port. I would be escorted off first, away from the public. They didn't want statements. They didn't want interviews. They didn't want explanations. They just wanted me gone. Before I left, the guard who'd helped me appeared one last time, looking exhausted but relieved. I asked him if the passenger had been found. He hesitated. Then he said something I'll never forget. He never leaves the ship. He just picks someone new each voyage. I felt my stomach twist. I asked the final question, even though I already knew the answer. Why me? The guard shook his head slowly. He chooses people who notice him. I didn't say another word. I was escorted to the ramp, taken directly to a private security vehicle, and driven away from the port. They never contacted me again. I never got a refund, a warning, or even a follow-up email. But that's not the part that still keeps me awake. 3 nights ago, long after I got home, I found a sticky note on my front door. Written in neat, perfect handwriting was my cabin number from the ship. But here's the part that chilled my bones. It wasn't the cabin I originally booked. It was the last one he visited, the one he stood in when he first pointed at me. And underneath that number was one short sentence: "You saw me." I'm moving out tomorrow. And if you're someone who likes cruise vacations, all I can say is maybe skip the ones that advertise renovated cabins from the 1970s. Because not all of those old passengers ever checked out. And if you notice someone who keeps appearing in different hallways, different lounges, different views from the deck, don't follow him. Whatever you do, don't acknowledge him. Don't look too long. Don't stare. Because once he knows you can